Uh, hey, thanks for joining us, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope everyone's well. So today we're going to discuss the online gaming law that was introduced and passed in Parliament at super quick speed last month. Now, what we know is that over the past decade, online gaming in India has changed quite a bit. Vishal and I used to interact a lot in the early days of gaming. Vishal Guntal, who's joining us, was previously the founder of India Games and India's most successful gaming company at the time before UTV and eventually Disney bought it. And we used to discuss quite a bit about how much gaming is struggling to grow, and Indian games are not really going global. And the launch of the iPhone first changed things, but it's still been a fairly slow pace for gaming. But what's really grown fast is real money gaming, a new segment which emerged. I remember when Ace 2 3 launched, and there were some cases. Teen Patti raised money from Sequoia Capital, and since then, multiple of these so-called games have emerged and operated in that gray area between gaming and gambling. Um, for some people, it's all gambling. For some people, this is gaming with money. But we've also reported extensively, Sarvesh and Aarti, who were with us at MediaNama earlier, reported extensively on indebtedness and suicides, even went to a police station, looked at FIRs and talked to families at the time on the indebtedness that came in from some of these so-called real money gaming. So there have been issues that have been highlighted about addiction, about many of these operating as get-rich-quick schemes. Um, and about 3 or 4 years ago, a large number of these companies and their affiliated industry bodies so went out and rolled out a very aggressive influence campaign in Delhi, to the extent that the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology even passed an amendment to the IT rules, recognizing them as intermediaries, as in just merely entities that are enabling interaction between two separate entities, as opposed to a gaming platform, which we've always known to be publishing. And that those rules were never enacted because they relied on the formation of self-regulatory bodies. But there's been a considerable amount of lobbying effort that's been put in, and funding of narratives. In fact, over the last 2 years, much of this narrative funding that's happened has focused entirely on offshore gambling operations, probably to just shift focus from uh, the challenges that some of these local gambling slash real money gaming services were causing, to entirely just saying, okay, we are the good guys, focus on preventing the offshore operations. What's also happened is that the success of UPI and the integration of UPI has increased the ability for people to participate in these real money gaming slash gambling sort of platforms, has allowed them to do microtransactions and small ticket transactions. We saw ads from one of the cricket game based real money gaming companies saying ek se ek, as in 1 rupee to 1 crore. And more recently during the IPL, one of them advertised, that people would get bungalow and gadi, a car and a house, um, essentially almost like replicating what we've seen with get-rich-quick schemes, right? So many of, despite the 28% in GST that was introduced last year, many of them survived and remained significantly profitable. Some of them were preparing for an IPO. And they were, just as we were last month, in for a surprise, where despite announcing that there would be 40% GST on online money gaming or real money gaming, just within a few days of that announcement, a cabinet approval came in for banning these so-called games. And within a very short period of time, all money gaming was banned in the country, with it being passed in the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and the president giving a assent. But the law isn't operational yet because the rules are expected. And until the rules are passed, the law isn't operational. But many of these companies have shut down operations. They've laid off people. There have been issues that have been raised in the public about the loss of jobs, about the loss of contribution to GST. I heard from someone that as much as 1% of India's GST was from these companies. Um, and the law not only bars these money gaming and gambling operations outright, it also bars financial institutions from processing payments for them, clamps down on their advertisements. And the some companies, as a consequence of this law, have pivoted already. Some have announced downsizings or in the process of downsizing. Some have shut. So we have a bunch of issues for discussion today, uh, about not just the legal side of things, but also and not just real money gaming, but also gaming, because there is a sense that actual gaming is also being impacted by this. So one can or should have games of skill been banned? Can the government override judicial precedents on game of skill? And is it constitutional for it to ban games of skill even if they involve money? Are fantasy sports okay? With and given that gambling is a state subject, and this has been a bone of contention, is it constitutional for the center to ban them? Um, and I have a point that how else do you regulate the internet? Because every state can't treat it differently, especially when it's all virtual. Are non-money games which have virtual goods and prizes and loot boxes and gacha boxes, are they also currently banned? There was a news report yesterday about someone who lost some or spent 14, some kid who spent 14 lakh rupees on virtual goods, for example, right? So there's also a plan for a gaming regulator. What will a gaming regulator do? What is the risk of users migrating here to global platforms? What happens to available games, um, that are already on Play Store and App Store, when a regulator now will have to come in to approve games one by one? And lastly, when there are rules that are expected, what would we want from the rules? So, one last thing I'd like to point out, I mentioned that there was a massive lobbying effort in Delhi over the last few years. And, we've seen a fairly significant amount of astroturfing happening. And I've frankly been quite disgusted by what I've been seeing, with the lack of disclosures from law firms and consulting firms, with who have real money gaming companies and as clients. And you'll notice this when you read so many articles on this ban, that pretty much everyone is saying the same talking points across, right? And no one's pointing towards with balance towards the addiction and the harms that have been caused for consumers. That people have pledged family gold and continue to play this because they get rich quick schemes. And almost everything in comments in newspapers and on LinkedIn I've seen suffers from the lack of undisclosed conflict of interest. And that's something that we at MediaNama have taken very, very seriously. We've taken an editorial decision that when we're reporting now and we're talking to consultants and law firms, we specifically need disclosures of conflict of interest. Uh, we don't want um, our platform to be used to push someone's agenda that is paid for. So there's conflicts of interest need to be disclosed. Similarly, with our discussions, because we treat these discussions as editorial, every speaker would have to disclose if they have any affiliation with gaming and real money gaming, so that you know where they're coming from. I don't mind if someone has a point of view when they're speaking on behalf of their clients. If it's a personal opinion, they can say that. But we have a disclosures policy from now on, because I think it's important for people to know who's speaking and where are they coming from, right? So I have no affiliation with gaming or real money gaming. We had a discussion on real money gaming a couple of years ago when the media rules were coming out, that were sponsored by a few real money gaming companies. we did in that discussion also point out that we don't see them as intermediaries, to be honest. And I don't think they took that, they quite like us saying that, but we have no affiliation as such. Um, Vishal, do you want to go next? Are you affiliated with gaming or real money
You
gaming in
know,
any way?
no. I'm affiliated with the real gaming industry, not the real money gaming industry, and I have been quite vocal about this ban, supporting this ban, and I represent IGPDA, which is the industry body of game developers and publishers. So clearly, I am the good guy here.
No, I don't think there's
I'm
any
just
good or
joking.
bad guy,
I'm
Vishal.
just
That's not
joking.
fair,
No,
right?
I'm the
There are
bad guy.
people who might be representing companies, but all we want is disclosures, right?
No, absolutely. No,
Jay, Jay, uh, you and I've been interacting
yeah.
on gambling regulation, going back to the Nagaland gambling bill, of which you were the only one to have a copy, and I remember you'd mailed us
Yeah.
with a copy at that point in time, which is how we first got in touch. You've had a lot of, I mean, just it seems that this you've been in deep about gaming and gambling, real money gaming and gambling regulation before anyone else was. But any disclosures from you?
Yeah. Hi, Nikhil. Hope I'm audible.
Loud and clear.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone. Yes, I mean I'm a technology and gaming lawyer. I represent several real money gaming companies. I advise them from time to time. I have also appeared in courts for some of them. Uh, I advise and appear for gaming companies, including real money gaming companies, and that's known quite publicly. But still, since you asked this question, I'm just disclosing it.
Thanks, Jay. Amol?
Thanks, Nikhil. I hope I'm
And
audible.
Amol, you are the voice of the consumer in this discussion because you represent Cuts.
Yes,
Sonali, who was supposed to join us, met with an unfortunate accident. She's and so couldn't join us. So we'll rely on you for the consumer interest part of things. Although I'll also jump in with that.
absolutely. And I think consumers are the one that we represent and look forward to your support, Nikhil. And as on today, there is no gaming client for us,
Okay.
only consumers.
Thanks. Dhruv?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I have represented in court generally and advocated for a gaming federation, real money gaming federation, specifically, and I've advised them also generally, few non money gaming entities as well. And it's quite in sort of in court document, etc. My name is there as a counsel, as well as what Jay said. But yeah, today, whatever I'm going to say is not, because there's few things that cuts both ways. So whatever I say is not to be attributed to anyone or any federation per se. It will be my personal opinion on that sense. Yeah.
Useful disclaimer, Dhruv. Thanks. I'll hand over to Kamya because I'm also going to be commenting as much as as anyone else on this because I feel very strongly about this. But Kamya?
Yeah, I just wanted to start with Vishal. MediaNama quite distinctly remembers your opinion piece on RMG and the subsequent action that happened post that in 2021. So I was just wondering if you could discuss that a little and sort of discuss the shift in the policy narrative around RMG since you wrote that piece.
See,
Vishal got FIRs filed against him in multiple
yeah.
parts of India after writing an article on MediaNama.
No, and then learned that MediaNama is the most read publication in the country because that's what all these people said. Uh, so again, thanks Kamya for inviting me and Nikhil. I just want to set the context that I started coding games when I was in school. I formed India's first video games company, and I know a little bit about games, given that India Games ended up becoming the biggest games company. In the middle, after I sold my company, I had a non-compete, so I could not enter the world of gaming. So I had kind of taken 5, 6 years off, and I was building another company called Goki. But post that, when I came back into gaming, that was in 2019, 2020, and then COVID started. And as you know, COVID is the time where all these games really boosted a lot. there was a lot of activity and action around gaming in general, and real money gaming was literally on steroids. Uh, and this whole narrative that this is skill-based gaming. In fact, there were TV ads with Olympic athletes trying to say that these are Olympic games, or you could become an Olympic champion. So a lot of these ads were coming, and I also remember that Rummy Federation, whatever its new name now is, had full page ad saying that our games have no bots and it is it is very safe to play and things like that. And given that I was not seeing anybody from the gaming industry talking about it, it was like almost everybody was quiet. I decided that, listen, as a responsible parent, I have teenage boys. As a responsible person in the video games industry, somebody who's considered kind of starting this in India, I wanted to make sure that I put my point out very clearly that this is not gaming. This is gambling, and this is based, whatever skills they talk about. It goes back to 1867 Supreme Court here, ruling when there was no concept of online or computers, and uh, the whole issue which I had was, and which we talked about, that the house always wins in this case. In skill based gaming, when I and you are playing face to face a game of cards, we know that the card is truly randomized. I can check the cards. But the minute a game is taken online, and when there are companies with profit as their motive, you have no idea how these games are operated. What are the algorithms running it? Uh, are the randomizations truly random when it comes to dealing the cards? So I think what really I wrote on the MediaNama article, and I'm sure Nikhil will post a link of that, really talked about these issues on what is skill games, what are non-skill games, and then how is skill game different when it's in online. And I don't know if you remember the famous case where Vishwanathan Anand lost a game of chess when he was playing online, I think with Nikhil Kamath, right? Nikhil
Yeah,
Kamath
with
ke
Nikhil
saath.
Kamath. Yeah.
And it finally came up that Nikhil Kamath was using a bot. So that is exactly what is happening. People who are thinking that they are champions and playing Rummy and Teen Patti and all these games, they are all losing because they are competing with AI bots who have the capability to beat Vishwanathan Anand. And it was a harmless article. It was an opinion piece, as we put it, on MediaNama. But the kind of response it generated from the real money gaming industry was kind of very, very intimidating. There were Twitter trends running in my name that I am a fraud and I am a fake, and there were all kinds of Twitter literally paid campaigns running against me on Twitter. There was, of course, these cases filed across the country, FIRs filed. But like I said, rather than getting intimidated, I think what these industry bodies ended up doing was created more attention to this, and I think that kind of, in a way, got a lot of attention on this topic, which ultimately where we have reached. And I really applaud the government, and I think uh, I personally believe there was no other way to do this. This had to be done like a surgical strike. Give the
I I can't hear Vishal. Can
Yeah,
anyone
Vishal,
else hear me?
we can't hear you
We just lost the
suddenly.
audio, Vishal.
Yeah, sorry, I said given the amount of money riding on this, it was important that.
We lost you again, Vishal.
Sorry, somebody's. One second, let me just figure this out.
Okay, so we'll come back to you.
Yeah, one of the things that Vishal mentioned, which I think is interesting to explore further, is the change in the policy direction. In 2023, the government had released IT rules where it had talked about RMG regulation to a certain extent with the formulation of self-regulatory organizations. I wanted to go to Dhruv on this. What do you think, were the pitfalls of this method that the government eventually had to switch to a complete ban?
And Dhruv, why didn't, let's say, why weren't self-regulatory bodies formed that in time mechanism actioned? Because that's all that was needed, right? Only when people submitted a list of self-regulatory bodies. Were the IT rules going to be in play? And did it come as this ban come as a surprise to you as well? Or because for me it was like a complete surprise. I wasn't expecting this. I had no idea where this came from. And I remember the Prime Minister later on saying that they had to move really quickly because there were very powerful forces behind these RNG games, right? And so the government's put out a very uh, worrying narrative, and we know the kind of sort of money that's been spent on lobbying in Delhi. So what's like, did it come as a surprise to you? Do you think the industry could have done something else in order to prevent the ban maybe earlier?
So, I mean, just to take 2023 rules, correct? So, I mean, your guess is as good as mine as to what the reason might be as to why the self-regulatory bodies were sort of not notified, correct? If you look any other self-regulatory mechanism, look at RBI's fintech self-regulatory mechanisms or advertising standards, etc., correct? The 2023 rules, if you see, it was more co-regulatory than self-regulatory because there were government nominee, a lot of power was retained with MeitY, etc. So it was a much stricter form of self-regulation. But if you ask me, were the rules perfect? I don't think so. I think there was a lot of things that the rules could have done to make it more stringent, correct? When I say stringent, and again, and that's why I said it's my personal view, I think when commercial interests are involved, we have to make sure, even if it's self-regulation, the guidelines or the rules that are creating those self-regulations do not leave a lot of space for interpretation. Correct?
So are you saying that the industry was ready with self-regulatory bodies, but the government didn't move on it? Or is it the industry couldn't come together to form self-regulatory bodies, and so the government was waiting कि कोई तो submit करेगा list?
So I think the industries were ready. There were about 4 applications that we know of. There could be more, but 4 we are very clear. There were 4 applications. The industry was ready. The government couldn't move, correct? Government gave some couple of reasoning. I think there was something on conflict of interest, etc. But the problem is that one point was that industry is involved. The dilemma is that self-regulation always have industry involvement. So you can't have it without industry involvement. But the answer to that was that if you look at the RBI, as I said, fintech regulation, self-regulatory mechanism that they built, or ASCII, etc., there's a lot more industry involvement or a lot less government involvement. So that way, I would say this was more co-regulation than self-regulation. Industry had given applications per se, but the government didn't move. Outside of that, I think the rules somewhere still needed a lot more stringency, correct? Because a lot of contours within those rules left enough to the self-regulatory body to sort of play around with. I would have loved if the rules were slightly more stringent, had the guidelines in terms of differentiating between permissible, non-permissible, the KYC norms, child protection, etc. All those things should have been more stringently drafted in those. But that's more on the content of the rules. But yeah, the industry was ready. The government didn't do. Their claim was that, there's industry involvement. The problem with self-regulation is that any self-regulation you do, the industry is involved. So that's that. So it didn't happen. Correct? Whatever, there might be other reasons as to why it didn't happen. But then after this, factually, your guess is as good as mine. I think Jay may add to it as to what his view are on why it didn't happen. But
also, what were these powerful forces that the Prime Minister is talking about?
I mean, so let's say this is, I am talking about money gaming, correct? Let's say money gaming is about 2.2, 2.5. Like people say online gaming, it's 3.5 billion. But look at money gaming only, correct? So I would say, and I think Vishalji will be a better person to give the numbers on what video gaming or what we say freemium and free to play video games will be akin to. But I think money gaming would be about $2.5 billion-ish sort of industry, correct? While $2.5 billion in revenue seem to be a very big money, but I won't say that it is larger than most of the bigger industries in India. That's number one. In terms of expenses on public policy, lobbying, law, litigation, a lot of that money, yes, there were enough money involved because the issues were quite huge, correct? If you see, there were litigations to the tune, I think, as Jay said, he was also there. There were litigations to the tune of 2 lakh crores of retrospective taxation. There were litigation, regulatory bans, etc. So there are a lot of things happening. A lot of efforts were being done, not in Delhi, correct? You said that the focus was on Delhi. A lot of states were regulating the money gaming also itself. For example, Tamil Nadu came out with their own rules.
Correct.
Karnataka was thinking about it. Haryana was thinking
of it. And Tamil Nadu, there was that whole kerfuffle with the with the governor not signing the bill and then it going back and forth.
Correct.
So clearly there was some political conflict around RMG as well between state uh, and the
I think you're
governor
very
and
correct,
state and
man.
the center. Uh, so what about jurisdiction? I mean, actually, we'll come to jurisdiction later, but Jay, on this IT rules, why do you think that didn't move forward?
So IT rules had a lot of problems, and on 2nd January 2023, the government MITI had released a draft of the rules. And just like Vishal Bhai, I had also written an article in MediaNama. I think it was on day 1 or day 2 of the rules on 4th of January
Yeah,
2023. It was called, I called it a farrago of contradictory provisions, the
correct.
IT rules. And there I had pointed out all these systematic issues. One is the intermediary issue, which you pointed out at the beginning. So, whether these online money gaming platforms can be intermediaries at all, because the IT Act only allows regulation of intermediaries. So, that
Hmm.
was the one issue. Second was the self regulation and conflict issue, which, when financial addiction, losses, when, like you said, people are in debt, suicides are there. Whether you can leave it to the industry, you decide how to regulate, whether that is fair or correct. That was the other point I had raised.
Hmm.
And more fundamentally, the point that I had raised was on legislative competence.
Hmm.
That gambling and betting, as you know, is a state subject.
Hmm.
Now, some online money games which are chance based are purely gambling and betting. So,
Hmm.
so that is under the state subject. Secondly, sports, entertainment, and amusement is also part of the state subject,
Hmm.
state list. And if not gambling and betting, some of these online games have the characteristic of either esports, which is a sport, or entertainment and amusement.
No,
Even
in
that,
fact, I remember Jay, I had a conversation with someone
yeah,
from the gaming industry, a
yeah,
friend of ours, Vishal, who basically was really, really pissed off because the real money gaming companies for at one point in time were trying to position themselves as esports
yeah, yeah,
instead of gaming or gambling. Eventually, they
yeah.
reposition themselves as gaming instead of esports. But at that point, there was a point in time when the lobbying effort was focused on esports
Yeah.
also.
Yeah. So, sports, entertainment, and amusement, public order. So, if these games, what the new law and the
Correct.
logic says,
And
is
then there was
also
this
state
entire
subject.
debate about should the Ministry of Sports regulate
Yeah,
or MeitY should regulate also. I remember or even Ministry of Information and Broadcasting was also
correct,
considering about it.
correct,
So
correct.
there was a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
regulatory khichdi being pakawed at that time, right?
correct, correct.
And
And
Jay bhai, after your article, how many cases were filed against you?
there were none, thankfully.
But for him, it's cheaper, na? He's a lawyer already. Misal, you needed to get legal help.
Oh God, I'm afraid to write anything on MediaNama anymore.
ऐसा मत करो. But Jay, sorry, I kept interrupting you, Jay. So on that
No, no.
legislative
So,
comp.
yeah, legislative competence of sports, entertainment, amusement, gambling, betting, even public order. If this is causing suicides, etc., public order, that is a state subject. Police is a state subject. Public health is a state subject. So where is this? Where is the legislative competence of Parliament in all of this? I still fail to understand today. Of course, they
So
have given certain
I have a
logic, which,
counterpoint here. I'm not
yeah,
a lawyer, but I was involved in the Shreya Singhal case.
yeah,
And in that case, I remember Justice Nariman very clearly wrote that there need to be separate laws for the internet
yeah,
because it's a separate domain. Now, if you look at regulation in the country, it's when it's digital only, um, it's impossible to sort of demarcate state boundaries. As an example, I'll tell you that when the internet was shut down uh, in Darjeeling, uh, people used to climb a hill on the border with Sikkim
yeah,
and used to access the geo signal from across the border. So they used to call that hill Geo Hill. This actually happened, right? So those drawing of boundaries between states is not possible with the internet. Even if you can do some amount of geolocation, that's a
yeah,
large radius, so to speak. So how can any state regulate the internet? I would question because it's impossible. It's actually infeasible to regulate the internet. So only the center can have that ability to regulate something across the country, because you can't draw those boundaries anymore.
No, see, internet is of course a complicated issue. It transcends the boundaries of states as well as of the country itself.
Of the country as well, but country ka still you can do
Yeah.
geolocation because
Yeah.
connectivity is
No,
coming
no,
through
no, no. I
through
recognize
undersea
that.
cables and stuff.
But at the end of the day, we are a federal structure. So just because something is happening on the internet, you cannot put the constitution upside down and say now we are a unitary structure. States are just municipalities, because almost every activity is happening on the internet at the end of the day today. So you can't reduce states to glorified municipalities just because internet is a complicated issue and say that now bye-bye. We'll regulate everything and anything under the sun.
So just to push this, you would have a situation where Karnataka would have a different law, Telangana would have a different law,
It's like this in
Tamil Nadu
US.
would have a different law.
Yeah. US is also a federal nation like us, and they have exactly this thing. Pennsylvania has their own law, New York has their own law, New Jersey has their own law on online gambling. They have interstate compacts as well. And there is something called the UIGEA, Unlawful Internet Gambling Activities Act, which the federal government says that anything by definition which is illegal as per the state law, we'll regulate. So anything that transcends the boundaries, there is a federal legislation for gambling, online gambling in US. But states can regulate and license online gaming and gambling within their boundaries very well, and it's working very well in US. And of course, payment processors which are outside the country, which are not licensed by any state, there are federal legislations for that. There is an Interstate Wager Act, if I remember correctly, UIGEA. So US is a perfect example of this. It's a federal structure like India. There are state level legislations for illegal offshore gambling websites and for websites which are not licensed by any state. There is a legislation, and it is working out well in US. So something in the spirit of federalism, where states are also taken on board. Some states may want to license it, some states may want to prohibit it. So there has to be that cooperative federalism element which has to be there, even if something is on the internet.
Okay, Vishal, you have a point?
Yeah. So I think this is exactly the contradiction, right? So just a few months back or a few weeks back, the entire issue was this is not gambling. States have no role to play. This is just
This is
like
not
gaming.
gambling.
One second. The whole contention even in the Tamil Nadu was, why is Tamil Nadu doing this? Let center do this. This is like video games, is like the internet, like Facebook, like Instagram.
Actually,
So they were all trying to say this is not gambling at all. Why the hell are states getting involved? And now that this has happened, suddenly, this is gambling. The state should be looking at it, and it's a state subject.
So it's hypocrisy, Vishal, that at one point in time you went to the center to say create a MeitY regulation for regulating this industry because states are not able to do it. Now when the centers come out with a law, now you're saying
exactly.
it's unconstitutional.
That's the whole point, right? That the obfuscation, right? The problem has been the obfuscation. The obfuscation of first trying to bundle this as gaming. By the way, real money gaming word is only used in India.
No, it is used elsewhere, but in that it's equated with gambling.
Exactly. So this whole concept of this is not gambling was the entire contention. The law, the self-regulator, because if it was gambling, it was anyway state subject, then let state decide, and then there was no issue at all, right? If you know, that was the entire contention. Now that the government has come very clearly and said this is gambling, I think it's game over, right? So why are we debating and still trying to obfuscate that this is gaming? I don't understand.
I think Dhruv wants
to just one minute before that. So I don't know about others, but I have always maintained this is a state subject. Even in court in 2021, Jungly Games sits out there, the first decision on online gaming in Madras High Court, and the MediaNama article. Which
but that's because you called it entertainment. You didn't call it gambling.
I called it sports. But that is also a state subject.
So that's what I'm saying. So you are calling it esports and entertainment.
Yeah. I'm calling it a contest, which could be entertainment, which could be sport, which could be something else. And even social games and esports, government has no legislative competence, no business to bring about this bill, even for social games and esports.
Okay.
So the entire bill is
Dhruv.
Yeah, Dhruv.
I think I'll take something from Jay and from something Vishal. I think what Jay was saying, and I'll just nuance to it. The act is not just banning games of skill played with money, which they say OMG, online money game, correct? In online money game, OMG, They also
I love that acronym, by the way.
It was an OMG movement for the industry.
yeah. So that's why I think OMG. In that OMG, if you see, forget skill. Let's say the industry was saying center, but in that online money game, they are also restricting online chance games played with money. That is clear-cut betting and gambling under the constitution. Correct? Forget skill gaming for a bit. Even the chance-based staking, staking on chance-based games as well, is sort of covered by the current act, by the center. That there was never a dispute. What Jay was saying, it was always under entry 34 of state list. Correct? So forget skill gaming. Even as per the new act, even if some states wants to come out and say, oh, I want to license, let's say Teen Patti, which is a gambling game or a social casino game, that online and give a license for that, that is also at the moment not allowed under the act. So what Jay was saying in terms of federal structure, etc., there's a massive confusion as to whether the entry 34 has at least qua the online realm lost all its meaning, even if we forget the skill gaming bit. So that's one nuance that we have to say that's more constitutional, slightly may not have that much role to what Vishalji is saying, because his point was only on skill gaming company, which is allowing games to be played for, let's say, staking and then winning some money. But there is a constitutional question as to how much the central government can usurp from an entry 34 for clear-cut gambling games which are played online. Correct? So that's an interesting question, which I think at some time will be explored, maybe not by the skill gaming industry, but sometime in future, the states will have to have a discussion with the center as to how they want to deal with that.
Can you just very simply tell us how is it determined what is a game of skill and what is not?
Sure. So it's a factual definition. Supreme Court has clarified it, multiple high courts have said it, which says that, if there is a predominance of skill involved in the outcome of a game, it's a game of skill. If there is predominance of chance, then it's a game of chance. Now, interestingly, what happens, it's a causal definition, correct? You have to show causality between the skill element into the outcome, correct? So, and because of the causality, it was a very subjective application of the definition by courts. So, for example, a couple of high courts have said that fantasy on a subjective analysis under this definition, fantasy is a game of skill. Supreme Court had said that rummy, though it was in a physical context, that rummy is a game of skill, correct? Some high courts have said poker is a game of skill. Scrabble was also discussed, chess was discussed. So till now,
all of this ignores the point that Vishal made right at the beginning, that algorithms can still determine the outcome, right?
So definition, if you see, so there are two things. So for example, today, let's say an e-commerce website, correct? If I am buying something on the e-commerce website, I don't know who the seller is, or I might know the seller, but I might not know the seller physically, correct? I buy something and a brick of soap comes to me instead of an iPhone when I'm buying online, correct? The problem is that the model of the e-commerce is not wrong. There is a fraud that has to be prosecuted. Same way in online, if you see, format of a game doesn't change from skill or chance based on whether there are bots involved or not, correct? What we needed, if you see regulation wise, what we needed was stringent authority which says, these are the standards, there are technical labs, there are international labs called GLI, etc. for countries where there is betting and gambling, where massive amount of money is involved, correct? And 3 billion is nothing in front of that. There are technical labs that have strict licensing regimes, testing, etc., where they say whether there are bots involved, the random number generator, what Vishalji was saying, is there or not. And if someone tries to subvert that obviously you prosecute them under fraud, cheating, etc. The nature of a game, whether it's skill or chance, is a factual analysis based on the rules of the game. There is no impact of, let's say, any company which is trying to sort of work around. That's a problem, but that has to be dealt with either under the criminal laws or if there is a licensing authority, etc. And then there has to be testing labs that does it. Happens across the globe, correct? And that's to maintain integrity and fairness towards the players. But I would say it is an issue, but it's not an issue of skill, chance, and gambling. It's a separate issue of integrity of platforms online. Correct? For example, tomorrow, let's say if you're playing a game of cricket, correct? Everyone agrees cricket is a game of skill per se, correct? When played physically or otherwise.
Correct.
Let's say if the umpire is rigged, correct? You buy the umpire or whatever, correct? And then the umpire's call are going in favor of one of the company, correct? Do you say that the nature of cricket has changed into a gambling game, or it's a chance game? Or do you say, let's figure out ways how to make sure the ecosystem of cricket where umpires and referees are sort of fair and that there are enough sanctions against these kind of activities. So
you mentioned
the problem here is when the umpire is set,
Yeah.
The bookie is setting the umpire here. So the problem is the games companies are running their own games. They make money and they are setting it up. That is the problem. Now, if an umpire is getting set, finally, who's making money here is the question, right? So it is in the interest of these companies. And my contention was and is that 99% of these companies were using algorithms to game the system. It was pre-decided how much money you're going to win or lose. They had bots playing it. They had call centers set up to play games with you. So you were thinking that you were playing game with Rajesh or Rekha, but it was some call center employee of their own who was playing games. All this was happening openly.
Vishal,
So
no. Point taken. I'm saying, just to respond, Nikhil, I am not saying that this is not an issue. I'm saying this is an issue. I'm saying this issue is not connected to skill chance debate. I'm saying this is an integrity issue and there is a moral hazard. And true, it's what we call a moral hazard. There is a moral hazard when there is a
no,
platform.
Dhruv, this is not a moral hazard. Look at the bottom line of these companies. The amount of profit they are making is only possible if the amount of winning percentage is different.
Agreed,
So it is
Vishal.
as if it was truly random and if they are only making 10% take. If you look at the balance sheets of this company, it's quite evident that they were making supernatural profits. And if anybody just asks that one question, that how is this coming from? Are more people losing? Their profit, by the way, is more losers. There is no other thing happening. There are more people losing, and that makes them money.
It's all zero sum basically. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
I wanted to bring Amol
Kamya.
in just to sort of understand the fraud aspect that Dhruv has talked about. You have Cuts has worked on this segment specifically a lot. I remember a report from May as well. Could you sort of bring some color into the impact of real money games in this specific segment?
Yeah, so I think just before answering your question, Kamya, I think while this has been a very interesting discussion covering different aspects, I think perhaps we are missing wood for the trees for the only sense that, okay, what is happening to the consumers? What are we hearing from the ground? And because this is not the only example of prohibition which is there. We have seen several examples of things being banned, prohibited online and offline, and still there the sort of activities being shifted to sort of unregulated gray markets, and consumers still continuing to face the same issues and sort of lose money. So I completely agree with Nikhil and others when they say that yes, there are concerns around addiction, losses, mental health issues, indebtedness. These are like a lot of these things are like get rich quick schemes, and industry hasn't done enough. But do we really think that prohibition is the solution? Because the problem is that once you prohibit, you just shift the burden entirely on consumers. You say that, okay, as government, we have done what we had to do, and therefore now it is on you, the consumer, because you, whatever entity that you are interacting with, you are sort of completely wholly and solely responsible for whether you sort of win or lose, or whether you have any grievance. You figure it out by yourself. If And there are other examples. For instance, I was sort of a lot of us might have read that there have been grievous concerns with respect to retail participation in options and derivatives market. There has been the report which SEBI, the securities market regulator, which has cited 9 out of 10 retail participants in the options and derivatives market is losing money. But the answer for that is not prohibition. For the sake of that, even if you prohibit, there would be possibilities of people sort of something else, and because of lack of other options to the consumers will continue to invest in such a sort of mechanisms for the reason of making money. A better way is regulating, so that there are some sort of options which are there with the consumers. There are grievance redress mechanisms which are there. There are
No, but
recourse mechanisms
Amol,
which are
right now,
Understood.
what you're doing right now is equating options trading, which is purely for the purpose of making money, uh, with these real money games, which was supposed to be for gaming, not making money. So are you acknowledging then that from a consumer standpoint, these were mechanisms merely for making money?
No, no, absolutely not. So the point,
Then you
what
can't
I'm
equate the two, right? Because the
no, no.
consumer
So
intent
the
in investing or in options trading, and options trading is essentially kind of like get rich quick, but it's also the market doesn't manipulate. People can manipulate the market, right? So, for example, with the allegation regarding Jane Street was that they found patterns and they used those patterns to manipulate them to game the system. And even now, there isn't really a very clear indication of whether they did anything wrong. A market one large player can come and manipulate, and therefore most people end up losing money, is very different from when the market itself is in a position to manipulate.
okay. So the point,
And to the other extent, it's also about the fact that one is meant to be a mechanism for entertainment versus one is very clearly a mechanism for growing your money.
no, absolutely.
So you
So
can't equate the two, right?
no, no, my argument was twofold. One part of the argument is that there is significant demand for this. Even if you ban this, there would be deceptive entities and other suspicious and fraudulent players which will come in the market, which will continue to supply these games as has been there in other sectors, and therefore
So we'll
you.
talk
So
about
that
it
is one
separately.
part.
About other players existing, we'll talk about it separately. I was merely responding to your equivocation with bond
The second, yeah, the second part
with
is
that, right?
that because of what there have been a lot of concerns about rich schemes, of concerns about addiction, concerns about over-indebtedness. All of these concerns are there in digital lending. All of these concerns are there in sort of investment in options and futures. And the point is that we do not address these concerns by banning those investment options or banning those options wherein people can put money. The solution for that is regulating. So that was in
Amol,
response to that part of the question. Yeah.
Amol, I understand your argument. I just want to understand, have you seen instances of this happening within real money gaming? Because I know Cuts does indeed do studies in this sector. I'll come to you immediately after Vishal. So I just wanted to understand an answer to those specific concerns. Have you seen instances? What have those instances looked like?
So I think what we have seen is that there have been a lot of sort of online mules which have been used to defraud people. For instance, there is something called as ex-helper, which sort of helps suspicious and fraudulent entities to create proxy accounts to bypass RBI and other regulations and sort of take funds from genuine gamers and sort of so that they are able to play. So there have been a lot of mechanisms
You're talking
which
about
are in
global
place.
play on global platforms, you mean?
Yeah, play on global platforms. So basically, as a consumer would not be able to differentiate whether it's a global platform or a local platform, or whether it's
Hmm.
regulated by state or is it regulated by center. The problem at a consumer lens is that there is something which if I access internet and if there is a website which is opening, then I am sort of interacting with that website. Now, if
Okay.
that website is sort of fraudulently reaching to me or sort of is a regulated entity and therefore reaching to me, that is none of the consumer's problem. Consumer is either using it for entertainment purpose or using it as a
Okay.
get a rich scheme, quick scheme. And there are ways to regulate both these things. Banning perhaps is not the best solution because these things will continue to happen even after the ban. That was my
So I'll come back to this. I have a point of view on this. I'll come back, but Vishal wanted to say something
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, Amol, that when it comes to option, futures trading, stock market, you need a KYC bank account. You need a KYC demat account. You need to show where the money is coming from. So there are very strict guidelines on who can open these accounts and who can operate these accounts. However, what was happening in real money gaming was no KYC on entry. Any kid, they were advertising 5,000 rupees bonus, please create an account. So they were luring you to create an account by giving you money to play first, and only when you win at the time of exit they were trying to do some KYC. That too was very loosely done. So the problem was not only minors and kids who should not be playing these games had access to these games. The larger problem was when they won some 100 rupees, they then went to their parents and did some KYC and got that money out because they had lured it in a way. So the way the mechanism was designed was completely anti-consumer, and clearly minors were being targeted. If they would have put
Absolutely.
KYC on entry, that without a KYC you can't open an account, I think this problem would have, I wouldn't say would have completely gone, but would have been reduced,
Exactly.
because so
So
that
that
was
is
one
the
of the
regulation
largest
that I'm
problems.
talking about. That is the regulation which we need. I'm not saying that they should happen like the way it has been happening. There is a need for stringent regulation. But my fear is that by prohibiting, these things will continue to happen and will get worse. So
So
that is
Amol,
why.
the problem is that 95% of these transactions were done through UPI. If government has effectively banned UPI and Indian payment gateways, then the only thing left is foreign gateways or
No, no,
cash
no.
or.
I think I would beg to differ because we have documented mechanisms of how these fraudulent actors are sort of bypassing UPI or using UPI for fraudulent transactions. There are mechanisms like X Helper, which have sort of codes to how to bypass UPI. What happens if your account is frozen? What happens if there is a regulatory sort of action against you? So there are detailed mechanisms into how to sort of bypass and showcase yourself as a
And these are,
genuine.
I assume, these are illegal mechanisms, not something which real money gaming companies officially do, right?
So these are mechanisms which are there, which we have documented in our report. Now, how who uses them is something which obviously we'll have to wait and
So,
watch.
so Amol, the link that you article link that you shared with us indicated that the RBI is already acting on them, correct? And the fact is that the RBI, even before this law has become active, has shut down UPI payments to real money gaming platforms already, right? We saw that with crypto as well, where we've reported that informally the RBI had told a whole bunch of platforms, banks to not enable UPI to, at that time when I was using it, WazirX and then ZepPay. So every platform had found different mechanisms to enable UPI. In fact, in one instance, WazirX integrated with MobiKwik. So you could put UPI, you could UPI money into a MobiKwik wallet, and then the wallet could be used for WazirX, right? So, and then that also was shut down. So look, enforcement is never going to be perfect, but the law enables enforcement now. And so if X helper is bypassing the regulation, eventually that mechanism will be shut down. Then so they'll find another way, then that will be shut down. But now this is legislative backing to say you can't put money into these things, right? And UPI for me, and this is Dhruv, I'll just come to you, but UPI for me is extremely critical over here because the issue of velocity, the pace at which transactions can take place enables a much larger volume of transactions. The small, like, my 11 circle was running at saying 1 se 1 crore with Saurav Ganguly. That 1 rupee incentive just to get in so you can make 1 crore, all of that stops now because you can't do a 1 rupee payment to this. So even if they would, if even if they said, okay, credit card only, all of a sudden you might have seen a rush for credit cards, but credit card is far more restrictive a mechanism as compared to UPI. So one can
So I
argue.
hope whatever you say is correct, but evidence and experience of consumers, particularly for instance,
No,
digital
no.
lending also, there were digital lending apps
No,
which
so
were banned,
no,
and
I
still there were a lot of
correct.
illegal digital lending which is happening. There
And
are a lot of
enforcement. Murder
enfor-
is, let me put it, murder is illegal in this country. Murder still happen,
but
right?
that is a
So,
so
so,
you
so
cannot have a zero murder society, you cannot have a zero fraud society. But
correct. And so
what is
therefore
the
the
acceptable
RBI,
level
so RBI
is
will have to constantly
prohibition.
address this.
So
But
we will have to.
See,
this
Amol,
reminds me,
currently,
this
no,
reminds me of
currently the.
one little thing, Vishal. This reminds me of, and I was talking to a CA friend of mine who said that he had to convince his real money gaming client not to integrate a mechanism by which saying, okay, you've run out of money, click here to take an easy loan. So lending apps were all, and real money gaming apps were also integrating in order to allow people to take loans to pay. And we've seen that happen. It's an offline activity which is translating to an online activity where people have mortgaged or have basically given their family gold, taken loans against that, and then use that for gaming because we are struggling economically as a country right now. There is, if you look at most of the FMCG companies, they've reported that there is no growth in rural India taking place right now. If FMCG is not growing, you know that the economy is in trouble. So get rich quick schemes are clearly, attractive at this point in time. Dhruv.
Yeah, so I think Nikhil, there's some disconnect in terms of what's actually happening on the ground. Correct? You said fraudulent game. Let me couple of facts. Real money games, correct? And this is I'm talking about real money games which are incorporated in India, GST registered, paying taxes properly. 2.5 billion we have talked about. The offshore betting and gambling, and there was a comment that you made or someone made initially that, people are saying that the offshore guys are the big problem trying to.
No, I'm not saying it's not a problem, but I'm saying the
No, let me give
RMG
you.
industry diverted attention to that from
Sure,
themselves.
I'm giving context.
It's not like they haven't have.
So if I were you, I would say that's a 30 billion, conservatively a 30 billion dollars that are going out of country illegally. And I'll tell you how I'll explore. 2.5 versus 20. Let's be very conservative. I'm saying 20 billion. At 20 billion, just the tax evasion is more than $4 billion, which is bigger than the total revenue of the Indian company. Now let's figure out how do they do these 20 billion, correct? You said RBI is doing something. I have informally and formally worked with certain law enforcement agencies, help them in tracking some of them. They are not using your payment gateways by registering themselves in any of these payment gateways. They don't have payment aggregators the way you think merchants have. They are using massive networks of mule accounts, correct? And I think a lot of us will already know mule accounts is where these companies, these offshore betting and gambling platforms will churn 15 new mule accounts every couple of hours, a few hours, or few days, correct? And these mule accounts of individual people sitting in some village, etc. And the control is of some person of some network of these offshore guys, correct? So even if IBM wants to crack down these mule accounts, cracking on these mule accounts is a massive amount of efforts that they need, and I don't know right now whether they can do that or not. My only point is, had it been that these Indian companies are 30 billion and the offshore are 3 billion, I would say, yeah, it's fine. The major problem is these guys, this is a smaller problem, things will fall through the crack, frauds happen, murders happen. But I am saying that the Indian guys are not even 1/10 of the illegal offshore guys. They can't be regulated. GST department has tried registering them under Section 14A of the IGST Act since the new GST regime.
Where is this 30 billion number coming from?
So I'm thinking conservatively 2012.
Where is the number coming from?
2022 December, Mint interview of one of the CEOs of Parimatch said that few of our companies that we know, digital companies, are taking $12 billion in 2022. Correct? $12 billion then, and few companies that he know of. They are growing at least 25-30 billion because even the Indian guys were growing. They were growing faster because they were not paying any tax, etc. Had massive amount of advertisement compared to the Indian guys. Even if you say 25-30% growth till now in 3 years, you will reach $18-20 billion. This is a very conservative number, which only one offshore CEO giving to a very major national daily sort of quoted, correct? I am going only through the horse's mouth. Some people say it's up to 30, 40, maybe 50 billion. I'm not doing that. I'm taking a very conservative number of 20 billion. Correct? So there is no doubt about this number. Even the government is aware of that this is a massive issue. So in terms of scale of problem, if you see, the offshore betting and gambling is at least 10 times bigger than that. In that context, you can't say, oh, murders happen. Correct? Problem is that is the massive problem because today, let's say what Vishalji is saying, a very good point, correct? KYC. And that's what I'm saying. The IT rules had KYC. Tamil Nadu regulation has KYC. Vishalji, in Tamil Nadu, you can't put even one single rupee in any money games which are Indians till you do KYC, correct? Obviously, there'll be slips, etc. So
Dhruv, just 1 second. Sorry, I have to interject you on 2-3 points because again, this is completely wrong information out there. All these companies who were running real money gaming have raised over $2.5 billion from VCs who are in India and outside India. Their combined market valuation, let's forget revenue. Their market cap of all these companies were about $20 billion. All the valuation, all these companies, one company itself talked about $10 billion of market value.
At least 3 companies are planning an IPO.
Yeah, so let's not obfuscate again over here.
How is that incorrect? How is it incorrect? I am talking about revenue.
No, you were talking about revenue, but the reality over here is these companies here had generated wealth for themselves and their investors worth over $25 billion. And one second, one second. So, which is why, see, the people who are doing offshore are all crooks and criminals. They are not, they are Hawala racket operators, etc. So, let us forget that, right? वो तो criminal है, वो तो terrorism भी हो रहा है, सब कुछ हो रहा है, जो बाहर हो रहा है. Mule accounts are not operated by VC run companies, I assume, right?
Yeah.
These are VC funded companies who have raised billions of dollars and claiming to have 35, $40 billion of market cap. And they were doing this. So let us not try and fool people by saying कि ये तो खाली 2 billion है, वो 20 billion है.
No,
20
sorry.
billion,
Because companies,
India में,
let me just shorten this point, which what Vishal trying to say is that don't just judge revenue, because a lot of these companies, and Vishal and I have worked Vishal's a founder, I've worked very closely with the startup ecosystem. It's a valuation game. So if they're growing value,
If
so
you're talking about
that number
users,
is still relevant.
if you're talking about users, all of us are talking users now.
No, it's also a valuation game. We know
That is
that
why
there are three
investors put
companies
money,
going for an
right?
IPO.
Why did investors put 2.5 billion? Not for that. They were thinking this
How are
2.5 billion
users
will
losing
become
money? How do
50
you, what is
billion.
the user's contribution? If you want to judge how much users are putting money, what is the metric? Valuation can't be, because these are VCs. I don't care about VCs. If you,
So
my question is,
listen.
revenue will give
Valuation.
you a number of who, where
These
the user money.
companies raise capital from investors on valuation, not revenue. Let's be very clear. Investor का पैसा जो गया, that was on valuation. Very clearly, it is a valuation game. Suddenly, now that people are losing, we are suddenly talking revenue. All these companies, you should look at their own press statements, looking at IPO and valuation. That is what it was. So the wealth actually is not 2.5 billion is a revenue, but 10 times of that, at least 10 times, that is 25 billion was the valuation total wealth created by this only for India. Outside India, to extra hai.
No, but Vishal, Dhruv's point is कि he's looking at purely from a consumer-centric point of view. Consumer का कितना पैसा यहाँ जा रहा है versus consumer का कितना पैसा वहाँ जा रहा है.
पर वो तो गुंडे ऑपरेट कर रहे हैं. See, offshore is illegal, done by criminals and crooks. This is legal, done by VC investors. That is the
Actually, I
difference.
want to take this opportunity since you mentioned VCs to address one thing, and you can probably corroborate this also. There's a statement that I saw after this law came out was कि how is the internet like how this impacts the startup ecosystem in terms of how unreliable regulation making is and how unpredictable it is, and therefore VCs have lost money, and 2.5 billion was invested, and how this augurs badly for the startup ecosystem. Vishal and I will remember this because we're old enough. One of the first payment companies in India was something called Wallet 365, which had front page ads on the newspapers, Amitabh Bachchan promoting it, and that was from the Times of India group, and it got banned by the RBI because wallets were not legal then. And VC didn't invest until later when the prepaid license came in. People enter gray areas. VCs particularly invest in gray areas because there's an opportunity to create regulation and to legitimize business where other people will fear to enter. And then, so it's a market making mechanism. So VCs know the risks that they're taking, that could be boom or bust. In this case, we're only talking about it because in that gray area of real money gaming, there was boom. And now there's a bust that's been created by a regulatory aspect. So it's a risk-taking business. They took a risk. It worked out for a while. It doesn't work out anymore. Many VCs along multiple stages have also exited and made their money. Whoever's left holding the baby are the larger ones who are taking it to an IPO. And that's probably not happening now. But to say that this impacts the startup ecosystem, at least from my experience in the startup ecosystem, that is wrong, because people go in to take that risk. And there's a clear risk reward benefit. People put money across 30 startups. Angel investors like Vishal will put money across 30 startups and know that only 2 will survive. Vishal, you want to add to this?
No, I think the simple thing is, and I've spoken to many of these VCs. They came to me and generally asked about what's happening, and finally the decision to invest was, they called it regulatory arbitrage. So in the VCs world, they think they were doing regulatory arbitrage. The example of Uber was also given, that Uber was considered illegal. Many cities had banned Uber, but then it got unbanned and regulation was came and Uber won. So they were hoping that somehow all these companies will figure out a way for the government to regularize this in some way, and they will get. That was their bet, and to some extent, getting the GST was a good step. Getting 40% GST was also a good step, but like I said, finally good sense prevailed, and our political leaders did the right thing, and their regulatory arbitrage did not work out this time.
In fact, there's a
Um,
comment here from an anonymous attendee who says, please focus on the social costs. Because I know we're talking about regulation, legislation, investment, scale, offshore, but I don't think we're speaking enough on social costs. Samol, you represent a consumer organization. Anything on the social costs that we've seen here?
No, I think absolutely. What you alluded to also at the beginning, that there is a lot of money that is going on into this uh, real money gaming ecosystem, and consumers or gamers are addicted to it, and therefore they sort of try and source money from different sources. There is a lot of concerns around indebtedness. I'm sorry, can you hear me? Because
Loud and clear, Amol. Loud and clear.
okay, because your screen frozen, and therefore, and as a result of it, I think you also alluded to the very recent example of 14-year-old kid who used his father's hard-earned, I think, money, and then when it came out that the money has been lost, then he thought that there is no other option but to take the extreme step of taking their own lives, and therefore there are a lot of social cost, not only direct but also indirectly, because I think that is what the government is also focused on. That okay, we think that there are a lot of social costs by putting in by gamers or consumers putting in a lot of money sourcing from different sources, and also indirectly they are not using their time and resources productively, and therefore let's try to sort of shift them to other ways of online sports, which are other sort of social sports or esports, which are not banned, and behind which there is a sort of a conscious push to promote them. So yes, there is a lot of social cost, but again, my point is that are we certain that this social cost would reduce by this prohibition? Because we have seen social cost in, say, liquor also. In some states are banned liquor, but still there is a lot of problem which continues to happen. So fingers crossed. I hope there is some positive which comes out of this, but we have to look at it.
Shifting away from real money gaming a little bit, I think there's a question in the chat that we need to sort of address, and this is an important area that we should talk about. Jay, I was hoping you could take this. There's a comment about what is the standpoint on in-app purchases inside games like BGMI or Candy Crush. Where have these been? There's been reports of children resorting to violence or conflicts or not getting the required money. I'm just trying to understand whether in-app purchases are sort of allowed within this law. What's the sort of
So in-app purchases. So there are three categories of games, right, defined under the new law. There is online money game, there is online social game, and then there is esports. So online money game, the definition is when you are paying a fee or depositing something in expectation of winning any money or other stakes. Other stakes is also important, money is important. But there has to be both elements. You are paying something in expectation of winning something else, winning something in return. So purely in-app purchases by way of registration fee or by way of one-time fee where there is no money out, there is no return monetary reward, that will probably not fall within the definition of online money game. However, if there are both these things combined, deposit or paying money in expectation of winning money, then it falls within the definition of online money games. And there is going to be an authority constituted under this new act that can recognize certain games as online social games, and that has the powers to make a ruling or declare whether a particular game falls within the definition of online money game, etc. Then there are rules that are also going to come out. So once this authority and rules are formed, also there will be more clarity. But this is what the understanding is from the definition of online money game and online social game at present.
So
Got
just
it.
so for everyone here, just just note down what your wish list from the rules and your wish list from the authority would be, because we'll close with that. But I think Suhan has a point to make.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah, my point was that I think I'll go back to the earlier discussion which was going on what's the cause for this. And I think the issue is that everyone was playing a valuation game in a business without keeping in mind the social context and the social and political context, and were pushing the boundaries to an extent, including the VCs themselves, who all were encouraging companies to just take opinions from various lawyers who would just sign off and say something is a game of skill. And it had become, kind of ridiculous, where everybody was just keeping an opinion and then pushing something out there to increase valuation, when very clearly games like that, even if you were to consider them in the offline space, would never be considered games of skill, and people knew that they were doing this. And
Well, Suhan, to that point, uh, opinion trading itself was being treated as a game of skill
yeah,
by the
no,
companies running that, of course.
no, and I think companies were being disingenuous, where I have been part of meetings where there were ministers, bureaucrats, senior police officers, and companies were uh, completely falsifying what had been said by courts. And
Hmm.
to the extent where even when those are pointed out that you're wrong, people at the back end coming in and saying, oh, why did you say this? So I said, you can't necessarily mislead government. And the industry itself also, if they say that, okay, there's this offshore issue, how much of CSR money was put in by industry to actually assist government to try and shut down these sites? Zero. So you kept saying that this was an issue, but you never tried to clean up the industry itself in terms of offshore sites and illegal sites functioning, or didn't go in to assist government. And this was the consequence. Even after the rules got passed under the IT Act, and industry became aware that government felt there was a conflict of interest in the self-regulatory bodies, was there a single industry association that put in these SRB names, going in and putting in a different set of names saying, okay, we are sorry, you think this is a conflict of interest with the names that we've put. Here's a new list of names. Would you consider it? Not a single industry association that I'm aware of, and there are people on this call from different industry associations. Nobody went and did that. And I can say in my, whatever, over 2 decades of looking at this, I've never seen government actually come and meet the industry halfway and say, we'll allow you to self-regulate, other than the media industry, uh, which was in the mid 2000s. But that was also because the media industry had a strong political influence, as well as they were statutorily governed. So the program code and things like that, there was a avenue for to do that. And I think that's where the opportunity was lost. As far as social media, I mean, social games and things like that, see, the rules are ready. They're going to come out in the next few days. There's an authority which is constituted for basically with bureaucrats in it and interministerial. I don't see in-app purchases and other things like that getting away very easily, or the two-step.
Yeah,
Uh,
I also have this. If every game has to be approved by a regulator,
yeah.
that will kill the gaming industry.
But unfortunately, statutorily, there is no other option, because it actually talks about an application of mind. If you look at the section, it
Hmm.
very clearly says there's an application of mind. And most people are also interpreting the act to say players have been let go. I mean, are not impacted by the act. I disagree, because the financial authorization, the clause which looks at the financial facilitation, also says any person who authorizes. Now, if I go in there and authorize a payment from my account, I come clearly under that. And FAQs are not going to save anybody. When an investigation launches, people will say, go try your luck in court. We've seen that enough times as far as the intermediary guidelines and things are concerned. This is a far more draconian provision with provisions there. So I would say companies need to be very, very careful, because otherwise there are going to be
So
people
by
that will
companies,
not.
you mean real money gaming or
No,
gaming or both?
everybody, because a violation of the act, a violation of a game which See, you won't, unless you're approved, you won't qualify as a social game.
So
Unless
what
you,
happens to those hundreds of thousands of games on the App Store and the Play Store? Are they invariably they'll all have to line up to take permission from the government
see,
now,
there'll be an
from an authority?
there'll be an implementation issue, but the fact is that we have seen that in the past in other sectors. I don't see that as being an excuse to say that I'm just going to continue. I mean, if you go before a court or wherever else, they say, did you put in the application? Did you follow up on the application? How did you keep running? The law is this, the law is this. So the fact that everybody went and removed all of these real money games, even though the act is not in force and the rules haven't come in, is testament to the fact that everyone's concerned and because of the penalties that are there. So I feel we can say that, oh, does everybody have to do that? Yeah, everybody has to do that. I mean, it's like the GST. When companies have said that on the platforms, it was impossible to generate so many invoices, the GST authorities were, listen, guys, this is the rule. You figure out how to do it. You want to do business, this is the way you have to. So I would be very, very cautious because there may be examples made of a few people and you don't know who those people are going to be.
Okay.
In my
Sohan, I got to go back to the others, but hang on, because now that we have you, we'd love to get your wish list as well.
We've talked a lot about different kinds of games, but I think what has not been discussed is esports. What falls within the definition of esports. Dhruv, do you have inputs on it? And I would like everybody else to talk as well, but just wanted to start with
I think Kami also, Jay has to leave at 5. So when it comes to wish list, let's get Jay in first.
Yeah.
So on esport, I think that the act is sort of at the moment, there's some conditions, there's 6 terms that they've given in the act, correct? The only interesting thing is that what they've said is that under the new National Sports Governance Act, it has to be a recognized game. The challenge that I see is that till now, mostly federations are recognized, correct? So you have to understand that traditional sports and esports in the way are slightly different, because in traditional sport, let's say if you have a chess federation or a boxing federation or a fencing federation, there's one set of rules for that game, and you would recognize the federation and then they do everything, correct? In esport, and Vishalji might be a better person to answer this, that same, at least at the moment, till the time we have different federation, one esport federation can deal with multiple competitive, video games per se. So are we looking at, because there's no system as such for recognition of games under the National Sports Governance Act. That's number one. We have to still get a esport federation recognized, etc., and then this thing will go on. Till that time that happens, there can't be a situation where there are esport tournaments where there is an entry fee and where there is a reward in turn, correct? That's number one. Number two, there's also a condition of it that it primarily has to be a multi-sporting event, correct? So tomorrow, if I want, let's say, a BGMI or a POGI esport tournament, that will not qualify because that will be not multi-sport, that will be a single sport, correct? So there, in the definition, if you see, they have sort of narrowed it too much, and there's a lot of open questions still as to how the National Sports Governance Act will come into play, how federations will be recognized, how game is to be recognized, because till date, the sports ministry has never recognized a game per se, correct? So those questions are still open. I assume that the vision that will, the track that will take is that there will be esport tournaments where there's no entry fee, and it has to be some sponsored event where there might be just rewards at the end of the day, correct? And there have been some people who have asked the question that if there is no money in or entry fee, can there be only sponsored awards or not, correct? That clarity, though the text allow, but I am assuming the ministry may in fact clarify that if it's possible or not, though in my reading, sponsored esport tournament where there's no entry fee and only awards are allowed. At the moment, it seems that it is allowed in that. So esport, I think
here's the thing. Here's one other question related to this, Dhruv. If there is no correlation between an entry fee and an award price, where because you stake this much, you make this much, can that entry fee be seen as a subscription separately and an award irrespective of whether there's sponsorship or not? Potentially, yes, right?
Yeah, I mean, so
entry fee could be treated as a subscription fee for that event.
No, subscriptions of social games are allowed, but what they have seen is that there will be no payouts, correct? So if they are giving you anything, there will be no payouts per se, even for the subscription fee. In an e-sporting event, what most likely will happen is that even someone will pay, let's say, 50 rupee or 100 rupee or 500 rupee, or let's say a small amount, but the winning team or winners will get a significantly big sponsored or otherwise amounts, correct? So that question is only falling only for esport. In social gaming, it's only money in, no money out.
No money out. Correct. So
Yeah.
I'm talking about
In esports, there
esports.
can be. Yeah, the esports there could be.
Okay.
So on
yeah.
esports, I just want to add here is, let's understand it is now part of Olympics. It's already worldwide recognized. The rules, there are federations. This is not gray. This is clear. Government may have to do a few clarifications, but I don't think so. The intent of the government was in any way harm or stop esports. They in fact want to promote esports and promote online social games. I think they just wanted to ring fence so that no loophole is left
No,
for
but
real
Vishal,
money gaming companies.
the problem is that if only those that are recognized by the Olympics are treated as esports, then pretty much everything that's not recognized
No, no,
falls
of
by the
course,
wayside, no?
that's what I'm saying, Nikhil. So I think what I understand is that that's why they are going to probably be having consultation with the industry. So these
For the
things,
definition of
I assume,
esports.
yeah,
Okay.
some of these things will be clarified, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And whatever discussions we've had preliminary, that is what their intention is, to grow this sector. If you even saw the PM, he spoke about growing the IP development in esports sector. It's very clear. So I think the laws currently were designed to completely in all ways block real money gaming and their proxies. And now they may require some tweaks, and we are very confident that the government will be more than supportive to do these tweaks to ensure that real games, which is real for fun, and esports, both as an industry, grow.
Jay, I very quickly want to ask you a couple of questions before you have to leave. So there's this question by an anonymous attendee in the chat. It's about the Steam marketplace and trading of bought or earned in-game items and what that would fit in. Also wanted to understand what your thoughts were on loot boxes, and then finally your wish list.
So very,
So
very quick answers, except
yeah,
the wish
Yeah.
list.
so Steam marketplace, again, if the player is not paying anything of value to to participate and make this would not probably fall under that definition. Other stakes, the definition is quite broad, but this is something that is not being done by the platform itself. There is a separate marketplace, so the platform will most likely not be liable for this. Loot boxes, again, it's a bit contentious issue. Again, if there is both an element of paying something, paying a deposit or some fee, and getting these rewards, then loot boxes could be problematic. So they might fall under the definition of online money game depending on how they are structured. And on the wish list, of course, the first thing in the wish list is that this should be withdrawn. This law itself should be withdrawn. But of course, that can only happen now through the courts, whether they strike it down or read it down. As you know, the matter is in the Honorable Supreme Court now.
So Jay, very quickly on this, what is your view on the state versus center perspective, and also on Article 21? There's a question on that also.
What is the question on Article 21?
Sorry, in terms of the right to what is Article 21? Livelihood, yes. Correct.
Yeah, life and yeah. So 21 and 19(1)(g), of course, the players who are playing this, as a profession, that is a constitutional issue which will be before the Supreme Court. Some of the individual players have also approached the Supreme Court, and this definitions the way they are. Even you cannot play a chess tournament, 10 rupee chess tournament. You can't enter and play and win a prize online. So the wordings and the overbroad language is definitely problematic. Supreme Court is seized of the matter, and they will have to ultimately take a call on center versus state. My view is very clear. This is a state subject. At best, what the center can regulate is the websites or platforms that are operating from outside the country, and this kind of legislation as far as union territories are concerned. Because union territories, Parliament has the legislative competence to make laws even for matters pertaining to state list. So either union territories or extraterritorial application, that's the only place where Parliament can legislate on this kind of a subject. And
Okay.
it's part of the state list. As far as the other wish list is concerned, of course, more clear examples and definitions of online social games, esports, and then there are some niggling issues which RMG companies which have although they have shut shop, shut operations, on things like whether they can make games and export it or provide such games outside India. So some clarity on that, and revenue sharing with outside and GCCs which are there in India, which are catering to not Indian markets but global markets. So global games, global GCCs, these kind of questions also, if there is some clarity by way of FAQ or uh, uh, rules or notification, that is something that is important.
Okay. Uh,
Suhan, you had a point. You've raised your hand.
Yeah, I first point was on the esport thing. See, the government's going conservative on it and has decided that they will not move away from that. If you are looking at esports, even if it's not aligned with what is internationally thought of as esports, the government in discussions has been pretty clear. We are going with what's defined within our statute. As far as my conversations have been, internationally also, the IOC has been very clear that the esports industry hasn't come together under any one single association. So it has not recognized a single international association as far as esports is concerned. Similarly, here in India, that's the issue. But what I see likely playing out is that it's only going to be real world sport, an online version of that being considered esport, and that esport functionality will be regulated by the association that looks at it in the offline space. The definition and the rules are very clear. Both the sports ministry and IT ministry are also clear. They're not going to move away for that for the foreseeable future. Um, so that's my comment on the esport bit. I slightly
what's your wish
disagree.
list? Okay.
My wish. Okay.
First, you can disagree with someone.
No, on the esport, on the center versus state, I don't agree that it's a state issue. As far as games of skill are concerned, classical arguments put forth by the industry and everything else, including the argument in that the industry has made in the GST argument, has been that we don't come under entry 34, which is betting and gambling. If we were to look at games of skill, so the skill element or across the board, if you look at every pleading put in by industry association and industry, it has said that this is an occupied field by the center can regulate. So it is clearly within the domain of the center, and the center, as far as this legislation is concerned, has used interstate trade and commerce. Looking at the fact that the High Court interpreted trade and commerce to uphold the uh, and health to uphold the Tamil Nadu regulation. So I don't feel a legal argument to say that you can't regulate skill gaming. Yes, the intrusion into games of chance and the blanket prohibition around that can be something that states can come up and say, hey, we may allow online within our jurisdiction, and you don't have the right to be able to say, no, we can't have it on the basis of an online framework. If folks remember the 2009-10 discussions that happened between Sikkim and the central government, when they had used internet and the Home Ministry took Sikkim to the Supreme Court. And then that case was settled when the word internet in the state legislation and then the rules was changed to intranet. Because they said that the moment you use internet, the risk is that you are allowing people to function at various states, or how some of industry use the Nagaland Act, to kind of legitimize operations. So I think chance, state issue, skill, difficult to say that. 21 and 19, I think the difficulty that's there is, I think digital twins could succeed. Non-digital twins would be very, very difficult if folks understand the concept of digital twins. If we were to say what is done offline can be permitted online, that I think would be the first approach that I would take uh, from a legal perspective.
What, what's your wish list, Suhan?
My wish list would be that
From
they
the rules
first on the
and from the authority that gets created.
there's no wish list. The authority is already there. It will be a government this thing with appeals, and the question is how are they going to manage to green light so many games that are going to come in on the casual side. So I think that's going to be a difficulty that's there. So that operational manpower that will be required, as well as technical manpower, to be able to analyze every single game that's out there, how they would treat subscriptions, how they would not. And as far as esports, there are games that are notified and recognized by the Ministry of Sports through notifications. It's
Suhan,
not only a subscription.
wish list, quickly.
Wishlist, I think the first thing is, on the prohibition side, they should look at digital twinning, because stuff that is allowed offline should be allowed online, and where concepts have been very, very clearly articulated. That would be the principle on which I would hope that they could even read down the prohibition as far as real money gaming is concerned, and also nuance the way that they would look at the issues that arise out of casual games where there is finance. Because the way that someone could interpret a subscription or a one-time fee that you pay, uh, or if I'm buying skins that allow me to win, that then, because say for example, I winning a skin and winning a game allows me to not have to pay a subscription for the next year. How would that be interpreted? Would that be considered a monetary reward? These types of things the authority would need to have very, very intense and in-depth discussions. And I think
Perhaps there's too much nuance required for that, because I play eFootball, for example. Sometimes I buy coins to win a particular player that will improve my game. I don't know if that's going to be banned or allowed, with gacha boxes and loot boxes and stuff.
So that's
And that's all a game of chance, in the sense I might put in the coins, but I don't know which player I'll get.
The issue is on where, if it's a chance piece, is that again you'll fall within the framework of whether you fall within the state regulations in that sense, as far as chance is concerned. Center has no role as far as chance is concerned. So I think the wish list is going to be, how do you have a joint industry, government, authority, regulatory body, regulatory interaction that actually clarifies operational designs of the way money flows through platforms or games, and a standard set of terms, so that we can have a standardized framework in terms and conditions, as well as terminology for how money is exchanged or received, or winning is exchanged or received on platforms. That would be my core ask from a wish list.
Dhruv, wish list?
Yeah, I think first of all, the whole idea, and as Suhan was saying, that while it's already written and everything, but as we call it's a wish list, social games registration, and then if they have to wait for a approval, I think it's a massive undertaking that the government will be taking, sort of going for. I don't think so that the whole video game industry and all the mobile gaming, etc., all of that can, stand still while this is happening. So I think there needs to be, if there could be a rethink on that it has to be more streamlined, at best maybe self-declaration or some other sort of solution for that. I don't think so a registration approval through an authority makes sense for normal video games. That's one. Number two, the issue needs, so instead of regulating content, they're regulating revenue at the end of the day. When they say games, correct, a game could be whatever, but they're regulating revenue models per se. And there can be, as Suhan was saying, there can be so many nuances to revenue streams, correct? Subscription, in-app purchases turning into loot boxes, turning into awards, a new life skin, giving you more chances to attempt the same game, correct? Or giving awards in terms of more tokens or loot boxes then, correct? So the question is, will the authority go into each and every question before giving approval, correct? And if that, will each and every company will have to travel or sort of give a representation explaining how that whole process will go into explaining the nuances of their revenue model? And when they're changing those revenue models, correct? And let's say like Vishalji might have a massive company which runs social games, but there can be a 2% or a single person developer, indie developer, who will never think of sort of going to an authority and figuring all this out, correct? Because at the end of the day, it's not content of the game, it's the revenue model and the general mechanics of the game in terms of how money is coming in and awards and the user engagement. So I would say simplification of that is definitely something that we need to look for in a wish list at least. Sports Ministry should also come and speak and say what they are thinking about. A little bit
esports
on this is on the esports front is definitely something that we love to have. So yeah, these are a few things that I'm looking forward to if there could be any changes there.
Okay. Amol, on the consumer front?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Nikhil. So I think the wish list for consumer front is that uh, uh, if this sort of act comes into force, then government should keep a close watch on whether the objectives which have been laid down in statement of objection reasons like addressing addiction and other harms are they really being addressed, and then coming back to the drawing board that if that is not happening, if the objective is not met, then what is the sort of way out. Second thing is sort of revisiting, therefore, some of the provisions to see if there is a possibility to regulate real games also. So, and with all the suggestions which have been made by different participants, including Vishal, in terms of stringent KYC regulation and sort of monitoring. The third thing is that on the regulatory body front, I think there is a need for more consumer representation there as well. Because a lot of times when you talk about government perspective and industry perspective, we do not necessarily think what are the direct and indirect collateral damage to consumers. And lastly, I think the point which we missed was that uh, there there are a lot of other provisions which provide a lot of discretion to the executive in terms of search and seizure without following a rule of law principles, without sort of a warrant searching and seizing documents and sort of. So the government has committed itself to follow a rule of law while creating a law and delegated legislation. So I would want that rule of law in terms of public consultations, drafts, and sort of feedback to be part of when this law is amended, when the rules are formulated, and sort of when this law and rules are operationalized. So that sort of there is need to uphold that rule of law, which is missing from the way that act has been enacted and some of the provisions of it.
Vishal, we started with you. This started
Yeah.
with you. I want
So
to
yeah,
end with you as well.
even I have to run. So thanks again, everyone. I think I want to bring out one important point.
I want a wish
Currently,
list above all, Vishal, because you're
so wish
representing
list
the
is
gaming ecosystem,
yeah. So wish
the
list
actual
is
gaming ecosystem.
currently there are no Indian game companies with any game or any esports game even ready in the market. Maybe 4G and Indus करके दो games हैं. Currently, all the games are Chinese, which are making money in India. So the Indian government first needs to create a framework of not one or two, but 500 game companies coming to India and first making games. We don't have enough video games being made for IP. Then these games become at a scale where esports can happen. So now what has happened is the industry is like the baby is not born and we have a regulator already. Normally it's the other way around. So I think at this stage the government needs to consult with the nascent gaming industry and create the environment so that firstly we promote game development, then esports. Currently, the esports and game development and all this is 90% going to Chinese companies which run games like Free Fire and PUBG. So the reality, a harsh reality is that none of the Indian game companies currently have any exposure or benefit of whatever is happening, good or bad, of this law. I think the only good thing is that we now need to work with the government to build the industry from wherever it is now to the next 5, 10, 15, $20 billion. So I think I see it as an opportunity, and I am confident that the government also will engage with us and get the right frameworks in place.
Thanks, Vishal. So I'm going to, I know there are lots of questions that we couldn't answer, and I realize this call should have been maybe 45 minutes longer. But I just want to say that from a consumer front also, one of the things that I've seen is there have been organizations that were set up representing gamers of real money gaming, etc. And I'm just stunned by the amount of astroturfing that I've seen. And I made that point in the beginning as well. But it's incredible that there's astroturfing on the consumer front also. So who are the real gamers is something that needs to be taken into consideration as well. And I think we need to treat real money gaming separate from gaming, because what we saw with the IT rules, what we've seen here is that gaming is actually collateral damage to the to the activities of real money gaming that we've seen over the past few years. And to that extent, I think the gaming industry itself has been awaiting support and a boost from the government for as long as I remember. Uh, I mean, I used to go for the NASSCOM Game Developers Conference in Mumbai, almost a decade and a half ago. And we really haven't seen any support. Animation's got support, but gaming hasn't. Um, Apart from that, I think the other issues that are going to get resolved are going to be resolved in courts. But I do take the point that I do feel that we need monetization mechanisms outside of advertising and subscription for gaming companies. If there are loot boxes, if there are, and there can be regulations around how they're supposed to operate. But in-game purchases, in-app purchases that enhance the gameplay or allow people to upgrade their gameplay are a part of legitimate monetization mechanisms of games across the world. I know because I've been gaming, started with Warcraft 2 2 decades ago almost, and I still game every day. I'm a Polytopia fan now. I play daily, so I think there need to be mechanisms beyond just subscriptions and advertising. Um, on the real money gaming front, and my personal view is that if these are get rich quick schemes, I think restrictions important. And one of the most impactful moves that has happened is on the payments front. Reducing UPI payments or restricting UPI payments reduces velocity. We saw that happen with crypto as well, where crypto investments were again a mechanism for get rich quick schemes, investing in meme coins, etc. Right? So there was advertising at that point about how much growth companies have made. In the same way, real money gaming companies haven't helped themselves by advertising get rich quick schemes over the past few years. And I understand there's VC pressure for both. It's a competitive environment, but this is something which the government needs to contain. These are high risk situations, and as Vishal wrote originally, the house always wins. And we have, even if we do, there are some mechanisms to allow any form of, like Sohan said, digital twins of offline games. I would go back to Vishal's original point that algorithms can control who wins in that situation. But let's see, the rules will be out end of this month. I want to thank Dhruv, Amol, Vishal, and Jay for joining us. Unfortunately, Sonali couldn't make it, but I have a point I think Sonali made a point in a call that we had with her that one of the things that real money games have failed to do is incorporate safety by design to prevent addiction, to also age gating, and these are all mechanisms that should have been in place. Uh, and the industry is suffering because they ignored those mechanisms largely. But thank you for joining us, and thanks Sohan for coming on board to share your views. And let's see what kind of rules we get a month from now. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye, Nikhil.
Thank you.
Thank you.